Good afternoon to everybody who have been participating in this today's webinar. Uh, on behalf of our management, faculty, technical staff, students, and the entire team, I would like to extend a cordial welcome to the resource person of today's webinar, Mr. Anantha Radhakrishnan, Chief Executive Officer, Executive Vice President, CEO and MD of Infosys BPM Limited. I welcome Radhakrishnan for this seminar. I welcome our respected CEO, Dr. Auran Jacob Verghese, and Director, Dr. Anil Jacob Madam, Deans, Associate Deans, faculty members, students, and invited participants from industries and other education institutions. Good afternoon, one and all. Before we getting into the session, I would like to give a brief introduction about the resource person. Mr. Anantha Radhakrishnan, before he has been elevated to this position, he was the Chief Operating Officer managing the global operations for the organization. He has played multiple roles at Infosys BPM, spanning technology, transformation, enterprise capability, and global centers management, working with clients in that transformation journey, enhancing business value delivered. Further, he has spent many years with Infosys Group, working across consulting and IT services. Before his stint in business processing management. Before Infosys, he has worked with a transnational corporation and brings with him a rich leadership experience and incentive domain capability across multiple industries, an intensive domain capability. Radhakrishnan is a postgraduate from Indian Institute of Management, Lucknow, and a honors graduate in mechanical engineering from National Institute of Technology, Tiruchirappalli. With this brief introduction, over to Radhakrishnan, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Radhakrishnan.
Yeah, thank
yes,
you
we are
so
able
much.
to hear.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Devya Sundari. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Also, my good friend, Dr. Prabhakaran. We studied together at NIT Trichy, and those days I still remember. So thank you for this opportunity to speak to this august set of faculty members from the KCG College of Technology, as well as the students from various places. I think all of you are in a remote distributed location, or are you all together somewhere? I doubt whether you'll be together given the current situation.
Definitely in remote places.
Yeah. These are indeed very uncertain times. What I will do is I have a small presentation which I will share and use as the basis for my discussion, if that is okay with you. I will also talk about some stories from real life as to my own journey of leadership, and in today's uncertain times, what are the key aspects which I believe will help us convert this adversity into opportunity. So that's really what I'm going to focus on. I will try and complete it in about 45 minutes and then leave about 30 minutes or so for, we have an hour and 15 minutes, is that right?
Yes, sir, we have.
Okay.
We can take it, yeah.
So I will sort of spend about 40 minutes on the presentation. So let me go and pick up the presentation. I'll share my screen. Are you able to see it for those of you?
Yes, sir, we are able to see, yeah.
Okay, give me one more minute. I'll try and put it on. Yeah.
Yes.
So folks, it's, as I said, my pleasure and privilege. I have spent 30 years now after doing my master's in business administration in the Indian Institute of Management, Lucknow. I've worked in 4 different companies. And I will reflect back on the different experiences in these 4 companies. I spent a year after my engineering in Railway Products Division in Sundaram Clayton. I'm a mechanical engineer. And the only useful engineering thing I did was help in creating the air braking system for the Shatabdi Express, which used to be the superfast train introduced in 1988-89. And we worked with the Railway Design Standards Organization to move from a vacuum braking system to an air braking system. Now, all of us today know that power braking happens through air braking, and the Shatabdi Express works on an air braking system rather than the vacuum braking system, which is really the mechanisms which were prevalent during those periods. So 1 year I spent in designing and implementing through NCCNC machines this particular air braking system with a team of very bright folks, bright engineers from IITs and NITs who worked along. And that was my only engineering contribution, unfortunately or fortunately. I think it's more fortunately. Subsequent to which I specialized in sales and marketing and finance in Indian Institute of Management. I then spent a couple of years in a company called Eicher Good Earth. Eicher is a company which is involved in light commercial vehicles, had a collaboration with Mitsubishi. And I hope you're able to hear me and everything is okay, right? I don't want to be talking to a blank. Okay.
Yeah, everything is fine.
So Eicher Mitsubishi was a light commercial vehicle collaboration with Mitsubishi Corporation of Japan. And that was my stint in Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka. And I used to be responsible for sales and services, after sales service for this light commercial vehicle. We used to get the completely knocked down kits from Japan, assemble it in a place called Pithampur in Madhya Pradesh, and then sell it into the markets. And this was a new concept then because we had the heavy trucks, but we didn't have the medium and light commercial vehicles, which was introduced around that period in the 90s, in the beginning of 90s. So that was again a little bit of engineering because we used to get a little bit of, since I used to be responsible for services and after sales service, one of the problems with the Eicher Mitsubishi vehicle then used to be around the clutch cover assembly because of overloading of the vehicle. Typically a light commercial vehicle is a 6-tonner or below, including the vehicle weight. And it was important that the clutch cover assemblies were designed for a certain load. And with the Indian road conditions and the loading, it used to have two problems. One, the clutch used to get, in the clutches saaptudrathu sir in the vandi used to be the common complaint. Clutches saaptudrathu was the first time I ever thought about somebody eating a clutch cover assembly, which essentially is because drivers continue to keep their leg on the clutch while driving. And of course, overloading led to the rear axle sometimes breaking up, leading to a crack in the axle. So these were two issues at that point in time. And that was a couple of years. I then joined a company called Hindustan Unilever. With Hindustan Unilever, we used to sell tea, coffee, ice creams. So I was in the foods business and I went into a state called Bihar. That time it used to be an integrated Bihar state of, North Bihar and South Bihar. So there I was selling not light commercial vehicles. I started selling tea and coffee, coffee na brewda. So that coffee and red label tea and distributing it into the rural markets and learning about supply chain. I ran an area sales office out of Patna. And I will use some of these experiences as I go into writing out the 4 or 5 tenets of what I think is very important in leadership and share my own experience so that from that all of you can benefit a little bit instead of having to go through this 30 years of experience. And you can draw whatever is relevant to your context and without diluting your own genuine leadership style. So I spent some years in rural markets selling tea and coffee. And we introduced the lower unit pack of Lipton Thaza Chai after Brook Bond and Lipton merged. And that was one of the key tasks I did in that market in terms of merging the distribution system of Brook Bond and Lipton. Very tough in terms of reducing the number of redistribution stockists, reducing the number of C&FA. And one of my biggest achievements in that stint, of course, was I always studied in Hindi as part of my CBSE Central Board of Secondary Education studies till the 10th, but I actually got to try out my Hindi and practically speak Hindi a bit in my own Madrasi accented way, but definitely it helped me survive. One of the key things, as I said, as an achievement was that we, of course, merged that distribution system. We did very well in terms of selling the Lipton Taza small unit pack, which is 25 paisa and 50 paisa, into the rural interior markets of Bihar. And obviously, I also ensured that as I merged stockists and got rid of them, I still survived. And I'm here to tell you the story. So that was a rural marketing experience. I then spent many years setting up the frozen products service supply chain for Hindustan Unilever, Quality Walls. We had acquired Yankee Doodle, Dollops Ice Creams Parlors, and we also had the Feast and Cornetto and Viennetta and all those brands of Unilever. So setting up the supply chain and distributing it from a central factory in Nashik, those were urban markets because I worked in Hyderabad. And for those of you from Hyderabad, we also introduced the Eutectic technology, which is really technology around freezing, Eutectic creating minus 20-degree temperatures to keep products frozen compared to the dry ice. I'll speak a little bit about that and what I learned from that experience. And then after all of this, I joined Infosys in 2000. Infosys then was a smaller company. I was employee number 9,000 in Infosys then, but the active 4,500 employees at that point. So I was somewhere in that region. I have a story around that too, so you should benefit from that. And after that, I spent 20 years at Infosys. Of course, I've traveled now into every market in the world, thanks to my company and the work we do for global clients. This is, of course, selling tea and coffee, to selling light commercial vehicles, selling ice creams, to selling software and IT and business solutions for customers. I joined in the consulting arm of the company at that point. And the first 3 years I spent in consulting. Infosys is a highly meritocratic based with solid value system company, which grew from $100 million when I joined them. And it's been a great journey of learning as well as contributing to this growth. And today we are at about close to $13 billion. Of course, we now have 240,000 associates. We are much more well known across the world. I then spent many years in IT services based out of the United States, selling IT solutions to our customers. And then the last 13 years, I'm in Infosys BPM, which is a majority owned subsidiary of Infosys. And I'm happy to say that in BPM, my journey has been across multiple functions, including being the COO and now the CEO for the last 4 years. So that's the experience which I bring. I'm based out of Bangalore. I am married to Priya. We are married 25 years now. And I have 2 children, and I also have a dog at home because my daughter is a big animal lover and a pet. So we have a 7-year-old beagle called Scooby. So I have a son who's figuring out what he wants to do. He's in his 12th grade. And my daughter is a big animal lover. So she's pursuing a doctor in veterinary medicine, DVM, in Edinburgh University in UK. And right now she's still there, because she's not able to come back home in spite of the college being closed. So that's a very quick background. I'm based out of Bangalore, and I travel quite a bit into the global markets, given the nature of the job. Of course, the last 60 days, I have not caught a flight or traveled, and hence pretty much grounded. And I'm happy to be speaking to all of you today. So I gave this backdrop because I will weave in stories around my experiences and weave it in to deliver a particular point. And you will then know from where I'm coming. The first point, I want authentic leadership in uncertain times. I feel there are 4 or 5 crucial tenets of authentic leadership. Authentic leadership is not about putting on a face or putting on a mask. Of course, now we need to all wear masks, but that's for a different reason. But putting on a mask, which is one of being different than what you are. This is about understanding yourself as a person and exhibiting those behaviors during the uncertain times in a way where you can, together working with a team, create a much larger and positive impact. Uncertainty obviously brings a lot of anxiety. So some of these things, the tenets which I'm laying out, could potentially help you in exhibiting it, which could be an intrinsic leadership style you have, or potentially exhibit your knowledge. I know you're all engineers. I'm an engineer too. We see things in black and white. Leadership is not black and white. Leadership is always gray. When I say gray, our ability, yes, leadership frameworks exist, experiential leadership exists. There are templates for you. You can go through an MBA program and refine your leadership further, or you can go through life and refine your leadership further. You can go through experiences at home, which can make your leadership better. You can go through experiences at professional work, which can make your leadership better. You can do urban work, you can do rural work, you can do global work. But in all three, there are certain leadership tenets, which I believe can stand you irrespective of your industry, irrespective of the work you do. These are some of the principles, I think, on which I have learned leadership, and it has worked well for me. So I thought I should share that with you. Now, the first tenet is what I call is mindfulness. So mindfulness is about your mindset. The most important tenet in an uncertain time, which sometimes we all go through given the current COVID situation, is minding your mindset. I have an example here, and this example is that with an elephant, and you will see what I'm trying to say. And this mindset is about, there was an elephant sometime back. We had gone to Kabini. This is, of course, my children when they were much younger. You have this elephant which has an howdah, and then you have my two children. There's a man with a puny stick. And this is the picture I saw, and I took an image of it. Sometime later, the same day, I saw this bunch of beautiful wild elephants. For those of you who've been to Kabini, there's a large river, and there are elephants which are obviously wild elephants are there on both sides of the bank. For those of you who wonder whether elephants can swim, here is the next picture. You can see a bunch of elephants jumped into the water, 13 of them, and they swam and crossed the river. Now, I was wondering, if you see this picture before, there is this particular elephant, which is quite big. Actually was a tusker. If you see, there's a tusk on the other side. And here is a baby elephant which swam away. Why didn't this elephant swim? Because the river is there. It knows how to swim. It could swim out into the forest. I then realized there's something fundamentally different in the mindset of this elephant vis-a-vis these other elephants. This elephant, throughout its life, is carrying a baggage. This baggage is the baggage that it needs food only when food can be given by this fellow with the puny stick. It is afraid of the fellow with the puny stick. And it is disciplined to think with the mindset in a certain way. I genuinely think that that elephant has lost its mindset, which I call as a growth mindset, or I call as a change mindset, or as I call as a positive mindset of what it can really do. Unfortunately in life, based on the many experiences all of us have, sometimes without our knowledge, we are all carrying this baggage. There are different types of baggages we carry. Some people carry the baggage of, oh God, I have not had enough resources. And because I don't have enough resources, I cannot do anything. And this I call is a resource mindset baggage. So there are different types of baggages. It is important for you to know that A, are you carrying a baggage? Sometimes you know it yourself based on your experience, your educational backdrop, the family circumstance in which you come. Many of these influences the baggage you carry. And because we carry that baggage, others can see it. Just like I saw in the case of this elephant, I very clearly saw that this elephant is not jumping into the water and growing. The other elephant. So many others can see the baggage you are carrying. You may not be able to see it because you are carrying it. So it is important for you to become very self-aware. So one of the key leadership things during an uncertain time is to understand where your mindset is. Are you mindful of knowing yourself and becoming self-aware of the baggages you carry? I'm not saying everybody carries baggages, but each of us carry, based on experience, something. It can be a positive baggage, can be a negative baggage. Don't connote it with any meaning. It is just a baggage. But you should be aware of it, because many times it can potentially make it can potentially make you fail because you're not able to raise up to your full level. These, to give you an example of, mindset, the elephant example was a good one. Now I want to talk to you about the second tenet. An authentic leader is somebody who's very comfortable with vulnerability. See, for many of you who are looking at this pile of stones, which are almost hanging in, the immediate anxiety is, when is it going to fall, right? Because it's very precariously hanging in there. But this is pretty obvious that it is somehow found a balance and there is equilibrium. For those of you who are engineers, which many of you are, you will obviously think about center of gravity and how it is aligned and all of that good stuff, which I think you should do. And you should understand why it's balanced so well. But when it comes to leadership and about situations, if you believe you know everything and you exactly know the law of gravity here, basis which this set of stones are standing, and you get so much comfort because you have worked out all the equations and basis which this is going to take off, or it's going to fall, or it's going to stand. In leadership, you need to be very comfortable with not knowing many things. For example, the first time I joined Infosys, as I told you, I had come with a backdrop of selling light commercial vehicles, ice creams, and I was joining a software company in 2000. I was myself wondering whether this company would benefit from my knowledge. I sometimes still ask that question, but I ask it lesser now. But at that time, I used to ask it a lot more because I was changing industry from the so-called old economy to the new economy. Those were the words then. Now you have words called pre-COVID and post-COVID and the new normal. But the point I'm trying to make, I came into a hall full of people, and unfortunately I walked in late. So I happened to be the first person sitting in that room. And this was for an induction program of about 100 odd people who had come in and were going through an induction. Since I sat there first, the moderator or the person conducting the session actually turned back and told me, why don't you introduce yourself? Please tell us the languages you know and what is the skill sets you're bringing. So I was the first one, and I said, I'm Radhakrishnan, and I know Kannada and Tamil and English and Hindi and Telugu a little bit because I worked in Andhra. And there was a huge laughter in the room. So I was wondering, why are these fellows laughing at me? I then realized when the second fellow answered, he said, I know C++ and Visual Basic. Then the third person said, I know Java, etc. That is when I figured out, hey, I have joined a software company. And in this language means software language. not English or Hindi or Kannada and all that. So I also laughed at myself. I still laugh at it because that is a true incident and it happened. I have a few colleagues who still pull my leg as to, hey, languages rather. Now, of course, when I am in the BPM business and later when I started working with Infosys, I started explaining it differently by saying I know the language of the business language, and converting that business language into technology language and programming business requirements into technical requirements, and then building a solution using different types of new technologies. That conversion between business to tech is where I play a role, because I understand the business, I understand the supply chain, I understand the jargons associated with it. And the company, obviously, when I moved into the retail business, where we worked with companies like JC Penney, Walmart, public supermarkets, Food Lion, etc., the company could benefit from that knowledge. So the first important tenet is for the leader to understand that he or she doesn't have everything worked out. There is going to be change. You will move out of your comfort zone. You will have new vulnerabilities which you don't know, areas where you have no knowledge about. But you should not be afraid of saying, I don't know about it, but there is somebody else who knows about it. And hence, can I work with that somebody else? Is it an area? Are there enough areas where I can bring value? But there will be many areas where I don't understand, and hence I should feel comfortable with vulnerability. I will add one more quick story here. This is not a career story, but it's a quick story. There was this king who got two falcons given to the king. Falcon is a beautiful bird. The king saw one of the falcons was flying very high. And the other falcon, he was looking where it was sitting on the branch of a tree. So the king didn't mind it. Next day he saw it again. He found that the first falcon is still flying high. The second falcon is still sitting on the same tree in the same branch. So he brought all his doctors, veterinarians, everybody to go and check this particular falcon. And none of them could make it fly. So the king got very perplexed, and he finally called a practical guy from the ground, a farmer who's in a village. The farmer came. The next day, the king opened the window. He saw the falcon was flying very high. Both the falcons were now flying. So he went and asked the farmer, so many people tried so many things. What happened? What did you do? The farmer just said, look, I realized this particular falcon has got very comfortable sitting in this branch. So I just cut the branch. So this is one of the important lessons which we need to know. Many of us, as we go through our careers, get very comfortable with the baggage we carry. Sometimes we don't even know what it is. We get very comfortable in a particular lifestyle. COVID is an outstanding event in many ways in shaking the whole system to move away from our comfort zone, which means if you have to fly high, then you need to have your branch which you're comfortable cut. When the baby is delivered, I'm not a doctor by any imagination, but they cut the umbilical cord. When you say you're cutting an umbilical cord, you create life. Otherwise, the life is that of the mother. But the life of creating a child, you need to cut the umbilical cord. So many times in leadership, our ability to get out of our comfort zone and cut the branch on which we are sitting to be able to fly is an important lesson. Sometimes that lesson is learned yourself. Sometimes events like COVID force us to learn that lesson. So being comfortable with knowing your weaknesses or vulnerability, and at the same time being comfortable to change is important. Now the big E. This is one of the most important tenets. No technology, no engineering can ever substitute this E. This is called E, the E of empathy. E stands for empathy. Empathy means your ability to wear the shoe of a person, like you're all listening to me. I need to be able to wear your shoe and understand what is it that you're seeking from this interaction. And with my knowledge and experience, being able to deliver a solution for that is what empathy is about. Empathy is wearing the shoe of the customer. Example, I put an ice cream tricycle here. This is a story which involves the vice chairperson of Hindustan Unilever. You know, this particular tricycle was first piloted around the Hussain Sagar Lake in Andhra, in Hyderabad. I was the area manager. We had Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan, who was then the vice chairman of Hindustan Unilever or Brook Bond Lipton. Subsequently, he went to Tata and Sons, and of course, now he's retired and he is a wonderful person and writes books and is a great mentor. Now, R. Gopalakrishnan had come to that market. The Unilever Innovation Center, with a lot of bright engineers like you and me, had innovated with eutectic technology. So what they did, we used to have dry ice, and dry ice is, it evaporates. It's like many of you would have seen all this Hindi film sequences where dry ice evaporates. That's what the dream sequence is about. Dry ice tends to evaporate, it gets messy, the ice creams within that cabinet become, obviously get melted. So there was eutectic technology, and this tricycle was designed with eutectic liquid between two particular walls, and that gets frozen overnight. And then next morning, it can retain that minus 20-degree temperature for some 12 hours. So that way we felt we can avoid dry ice, which was a pain to source, and then also led to product quality issues. So we had innovated on it, and the first innovation pilot was put into Hyderabad. Now, why I'm talking empathy is, was this eutectic technology efficient? The answer was yes. Was it effective? The answer was yes. Was the experience very good? Now, for answering the question whether the experience was very good, you need to wear the shoe of the stakeholder, which is empathy. In this case, with a pushcart vendor, one of the biggest problems in this was, if you see, this particular thing has a compressor cabinet with the grill. The compressor is very heavy, as a lot of you mechanical engineers know. Of course, nowadays there are newer technologies, but this compressor was very heavy. I'm talking here about the 90s. So the problem was, this tricycle weighed 330 kg when fully loaded with ice cream and with the compressor. And even before loading ice cream, it was already worth some 250 or 270 kg. Now, obviously, this is a design flaw. Now, we all knew this, but we wanted to hide it because we wanted to save the innovation lab from any embarrassment. Sometimes innovations go wrong because you're doing it within the lab and not doing it on the field. And we knew, and we had communicated back, and in the Hindustan Innovation Lab obviously had the feedback, and they would have worked on it. And obviously a bright guy like some of you would have removed the compressor away, kept the compressor outside, so that when the cooling is needed, the compressor is needed, but then subsequently you don't need. Now, all this happened subsequently, but I'm bringing the point of empathy because Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan, who had visited, we decided not to tell him this problem because we didn't want him to feel that, there's a big issue and all that. Like, it happens sometimes, not because we wanted to cheat him or anything, but we just felt it that, why put somebody, the innovation lab, under trouble. So then R. Gopalakrishnan saw everything. We told him the story. The vendor told him the story, the ice cream vendor. Then R. Gopal said, let me jump onto the tricycle and let me ride it. So he sat on it because he wanted to wear the shoe of the vendor. We had told the vendor, don't tell all this problem. Tell him everything is wonderful. Dry ice was useless. This is efficient. This is effective. Product quality is great. Consumers are liking the experience. But when he could not move the tricycle, he told me to jump on it. I also jumped on it, knowing fully well that I can't even move it by an inch. I used to be much more thinner and punier then. And it didn't move an inch. He said, what is the problem? I said, the problem is, that's when the hell broke loose. The vendor said, sir, this is 350 kg. My God, I need 4 people to push it. And I have to distribute my savings to 4 people. So the message here is engineering, innovation, efficiency, effectiveness is important. But if you want to truly experience what is happening, you need to have empathy. And this is no technology can substitute empathy because that's unique to you. See, learning from crucibles. Every time in life we go through an experience. That experience can be good. That experience can be bad. But all of you know what a crucible is, especially chemical folks with chemistry and chemical. Crucible is where you do an experiment and you mix a lot of liquids, whatever, acid plus alkali equal to salt plus water and all that good stuff. The crucible is where a chain reaction occurs and a vigorous reaction occurs. Now you observe the vigorous reaction and you say you got copper sulfate blue color, etc. Which means something which didn't start as blue became blue. Similarly, in life, you will have many crucibles, which means many experiences. And these experiences, some will be very pleasant, some will be very tough. But what you learn from the crucibles of experience becomes very important. It could be one of personal life, it could be one of a professional life, but a crucible is something which makes you, if you don't observe the crucible and see the reaction and understand it, then there is no fun in going through the crucible. So in some form, a crucible all of us go through, including this COVID crucible, we should have the ability to reflect and learn from it and then use the opportunity to reflect back. To give you a simple example, in the BPM industry, if I look at the old normal pre-COVID, we all used to come into a virtual firewall of the customer. The customer insisted that work happen only within their boundary. So we had something called ODCs, which is whatever, offshore development center or offshore operation center, whatever that is, where it is an extended arm of the client's network within which you need to work. Now, obviously, with COVID, we all were forced to help our employees to start working from home, which has now become a distributed virtual home development center, which is you're working in your home virtually. Of course, today I'm working in my office. This week I started working at the office because guidelines in Karnataka allow 33% of people to come to work. So, and I have some of my employees where clients didn't give us permission, have started coming to work. So as a leader, I thought I should also come to show them the way. And that's why I'm doing this session for you from my office. The point I'm making is that we should learn from this crucible. This is an overnight crucible. So now we are working with customers that in the new normal, why do we need large campuses? Why do you need a bunch of people? We used to have a locker room. People can't even take their phone. They can't take a notebook, etc. because of data security, privacy. Now, obviously, we have put, desktop DLP software, encryption, all of it on the desktop or the laptops which people have taken home, thin clients, which can ensure that nobody can toy around with too much of data. We also have to trust our employees to follow the employee code of conduct. And then, yes, sometimes there could be people who deviate for whom we'll have to take very stringent action. But this crucible of COVID should help us to clearly move to the new normal. And the new normal need not be about working in a large campus with physical space, but working virtually from a distributed workplace. So that's one of the learnings from this crucible. Now I'll come to the almost the last point. Always in life, you should remember that we all die empty. I don't know whether you have read a book. There is a book called Dying Empty. Dying Empty is an outstanding book. I would recommend that you read it. I'm not a big book reader myself, but this book really opened up. What you mean by dying empty is the art of giving. It's not the art of living. It's the art of giving. Now, all of us accumulate knowledge, accumulate wealth, accumulate experiences, accumulate homes, accumulate bank accounts, etc., etc., etc. We all keep on accumulating. Why? Because we are worried about an uncertain day. What happens? How do I educate my children? What happens to me when I'm old? Etc., etc. A lot of things we do. But please remember that when you die, you always die empty. So what you need to do is give knowledge, give your wealth, give your experiences, share it, give, and share. That helps you to die empty, because whether you like it or not, you die empty. All of us know that. Even, you have one golden tooth which you have put because your tooth fell down. They ensure that that golden tooth is pulled out before you are put into the cremation. Why waste the gold? Correct? So the point I'm making is, it's very important for us to understand this. It's very counterintuitive. Most of the time in life, we are only trying to take. But you should realize that we all die empty. And at a period in your life, I'm not saying from day one, you obviously need to accumulate wealth, you need to accumulate knowledge, you need to accumulate experience. But at a phase in life, you should start giving so that you can die empty. As the saying goes, take good care of your reputation, because it's going to live much longer than you. Because a person's reputation is basis what the person left behind as a legacy, not when he or she is in the chair. And that's a very important thing for you to remember, because I have seen this in my own personal example. When my mother passed away, I realized the wealth of what she used to tell me, because the amount of people who came to her funeral, including all stratas of society, was much, much higher than what I would have ever imagined. So the important thing for you folks is to realize that as you grow as a young college student, wanting to achieve, wanting to do post-graduation, wanting to do MBA, wanting to do higher things, do remember that we all die empty. So we should attempt to truly die empty by giving all the knowledge, the wealth which we have, to various people, whomever you think appropriate, but you should do it. So that's an important tenet, because the art of giving brings with it a lot of head and heart, balance, empathy, a lot of the other tenets which I spoke about. I'll pause here. This is the last slide, and I will take questions. See that, just to recap for you, authentic leadership has 5 tenets. The tenet of being conscious of your mindset and being mindful of your surrounding, especially in COVID times, being very mindful of your surroundings, your community, your workplace, your home, and knowing what is going on is very important. Along with mindfulness, knowing your own mindset, which is making you operate with some baggages or with no baggages, is important. Change, the ability to change and move out of comfort zones at every point in time. And also knowing that every time you move out of your comfort zone, there will be some new challenges on which you are not geared. Empathy, ability to wear somebody else's shoe. This is something no technology ever can replace. Learnings from Crucible. All of us go through good and bad experiences, and can we reflect back and learn from it rather than try to hide the experience or ignore it. The art of giving, which is to serve others. And the ability to serve others is an important ability which will give you great sense of purpose, where you put purpose above self and make you a very authentic and successful leader. So these are some of my thoughts on what I have. Yeah, I'll have some coffee here. Thanks. So these are some of the thoughts I have on what I have learned. To some extent, I have practiced them. And to some extent, I'm still in the journey of trying to practice them. So I pause here and I will now stop the sharing, and I am happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much, sir. It's always an inspiration to hear from successful people, and hearing your growth story. And it also actually gives us much more confidence to face the situation like this. I request the participants, you can type your questions in Q&A and we can put forth to him.
Madam, it will be useful to know approximately how many students and faculty are in this. I see 79 participants. Yeah.
Yeah, 79 participants. They are all heads of our departments, and few industry people have also joined here today.
Very nice.
And faculty, senior faculty, heads of the departments are here. And our director, Dr. Annie Jacob, she is also online here listening to you.
Namaste, pleasure.
And all the others are students, and especially our final years, third years, all of them are live on Facebook. So they are just watching them.
Oh, okay. This is live on Facebook. Okay.
Yeah, live on FB. Yeah. Any questions, you can put it in Q&A so that I can put forth to him.
Yeah, or there is also a chat window which I opened, but that seems to indicate only panelists.
There is an option for them. They can also type to the panelists.
Okay. So I hope folks, while I didn't give a very hard engineering topic, I felt that along with the knowledge of engineering and the knowledge of business domain, it's also important to understand some level of leadership tenets. And that's why I chose this topic.
Actually, one in private chat, a question has come. How do you connect between emotional intelligence and leadership quality? It's from one of our faculty.
See, there is no black and white answer to it. As I said, in leadership, there's always shades of gray influenced by our own experience. I'm a very strong believer, extremely strong believer, that you need 3 or 4 quotients to come together. See, all of us understand the intelligence quotient, which is IQ. IQ is easily measurable. It is, there are tests for it. Then you have emotional quotient, an ability for a person, whether in success or in failure, to maintain an emotional balance and an emotional connect with what he or she is doing and what the larger purpose of what he or she is doing is about. The third, of course, is what I call as the spiritual quotient. Now, spiritual quotient is your ability to relate to something larger than you, which could be God. For those of you who are atheists, obviously something else, a larger force, which is obviously making the world go around and tick. And getting a balance between these three and operating in the intersection of these three is an outstanding tenet to have. A lot of saints and leaders who are very good have mastered the art of doing this. And I'm a very big believer that I have an initiative in Infosys called Bringing the Head and Heart Together. So in every decision we make, applying the head is very important because it's domain, it's rationale, it's creativity. But applying the heart, which is the emotion part, and the empathy part, which I spoke to you about, and hence bringing these two together is a balance which you need to do in every decision you make. That makes you a lot more well thought through and deliberate in your strategy or decisions. So that's my view. I know there could be others who give an alternate view that you need to be very only focused on emotion or only focused on rationality. But I guess we need to find the right balance as per each context.
Thank you, sir. And one more question from our advisor, Dr. Sambandhan. Is sacrifice also a leadership quality?
Well, honestly, I believe so. See, what you call a sacrifice is a leadership tenet. Let me explain this a bit. Sacrifice is about having a privilege or having an entitlement and not using that entitlement. Which means, I'm giving you an example. Suppose I'm entitled to fly in business class, and I'm telling this company that we all need to now cut costs. Then I can say that all of you need to, who are below a certain level, can fly only economy. Of course, now there's no question of flying. All of us are virtual, and we're going to be on this webinar and do all our conversations through virtual, whether it's Zoom or whatever the various different. We use a lot of Cisco's WebEx or Microsoft Teams, so both are fine. So sacrifice is about giving, and giving for me is a trait which brings with it a lot of inherent, the art of giving, and this is biological, and many of you who are in biochemistry would understand. It releases up a lot of hormones which are good for your well-being. You feel happy. For example, take the current COVID situation. Even after working through the day, I spent a couple of hours with Government of Karnataka with my team, trying to do three things. One, inform, educate, contain, track, trace, test, and treat the people with the virus. We are running a telemedicine initiative called Apta Mitra. Apta Mitra is an initiative which is Apta Mitra is soulmate. There's a movie called Chandramukhi. I'm a big Rajini fan. And now Chandramukhi 2 is apparently coming, but with no Rajini sir in it. But if you look at Apta Mitra, it's the first movie of Dr. Vishnu Vardhan in 2004. The remake was Chandramukhi. Apta Mitra means soulmate or alter ego. So we created a helpline called Apta Mitra, a smart application which you can download from the Google Store or the Apple Store. And you can go through a set of questions. It's complementary to Arogya Setu, but it helps you speak to a nurse or a doctor. Thereby, you don't have to go to an hospital. Thereby, there are two things which happen. Some of us have some cold cough, we are worried whether it's COVID. You don't have to go to a hospital. And you can still speak to a doctor. The doctor also is saved bother because he or she is working from a home and not having to come to an hospital to expose the frontline workers to the virus. So I'm just giving this as an example of sacrifice, because sacrifice is many levels. You have 14, you want your 24 hours in a day, you want to give 2 hours for something which is not going to get you even $1 of money. But if you feel you have a core team which can contribute to the larger purpose of the society, that's sacrifice too, in some form. I'm not saying I'm doing a big sacrifice. As a matter of fact, I'm not. I feel I get a lot of knowledge and energy from it because I understand we have saved so many people, we have sent so many ambulances to so many people, etc. But finding that sense of purpose, and if you can find that sense of purpose and sacrifice and give towards helping you move towards that purpose, it's a good leadership trait to have. It will give you a great sense of feeling of balance and comfort.
Thank you. And to add to his point, the post, there is a video about their development by their Vice President Strategic Business Head in their Facebook page and as well as in their YouTube channel. Might be all of us can go and have a look at it also. There is one more
Sorry,
question.
about Apta Mitra, you're saying?
Yes, yeah.
See, Apta Mitra actually is
was there. Yeah.
It's a Government of Karnataka initiative, the Department of Health and Human Welfare or Family Welfare. And we are privileged to be one of the BPM companies which is partnering it. I just thought it fit to mention that even sacrificing time is a way of sacrifice. It's about all of us have time. Many of us say, I don't have money. Sacrifice, many people think, is only about money. It can be your time. It can be your expertise. It can be what you can do to make a difference. Okay, thank you.
And one more question from our Dr. Kavita Balamurugan.
Yeah.
How do you react when a job is not done on time by your colleagues?
Well, I react like most bosses do, which is demand as to why they couldn't have done it. If you had asked me this question when I finished my MBA and started life in Aisha, I would have been extremely task oriented. I would have said, thumped the table, jumped a bit, uh, maybe even screamed at them. But you know, the world has changed. All of us have children. I have young millennials at home. Nobody is going to care whether you're CEO or whether you're chaprasi. Doesn't matter, honestly. Absolutely doesn't matter. The new kids, your students, they don't care. The only way, that is what you call as power of position. Nobody cares for power of position. You might think you have some power, but I can tell you, if you have 40,000 associates across the world and you have to get them to do things on time for a client, it is the power of leading by example, the power of inspiring them to do it, the power of coaching them, the power of making them see the world the same way as you are seeing. So it is very tough. Yes, you need to push hard. You need to find out the reasons why they didn't deliver or why they led you up a garden path. But you also need to show the wherewithal to understand the constraints which made them change or made them change the timeline. But yes, you can demand for greater transparency, greater communication, proactive flagging, all of that. So there will be lessons from it. But being just blindly task focused and saying, I don't care what happens, I need this to be delivered come what may, is no longer the world. People might do it once for you, may do it second time for you. Third time, they'll say, Radha has gone mad. Yeah, he keeps on shouting. So let's try and avoid going into any discussion with him. And it'll show in the productivity they're able to do. So it's a fine balance. There are days where I throw a tantrum. There are days where I'm a little more receptive, but they know at the core of it is a person who is genuine, who's authentic, and who also has his own pressures or compulsions, basis which he or she is making a comment. So I always, even if I throw a tantrum, after I calm down, I do reach out to people and tell them, I hope this is the only two things I wanted to tell you. But if you have taken 5 other things, those are not intended. So I'm sorry if I did something different. It's important. That's what I call as leadership vulnerability. Your ability to be humble and go back and say, I did a mistake, and not feel that, oh, suddenly now CEO has become chaprasi because you acknowledged a mistake. So my point to this is that you can use it in a very powerful way if you understand your people well.
Thank you. And there are also questions coming in from FB. Thanks for the wonderful session. This is Girija from Suguna College of Engineering, Coimbatore. Her query is, Generation Z mindset is quite different. Can current leadership skills work out with them too?
My average age in the company, I should let you in on the secret. In spite of me and my age group, you would know Prabhakar's age, I guess. So I'm the same age as Prabhakaran, which is clearly past the 50 by a couple of years. Now, the fact is that if I have the average age in the company is 26, so I'm double the age of the company. And I think that would have been 25 if they didn't add my age. But the point is, with 26-year-olds, there are no givens. I perfectly think leadership styles, which the tenets I spoke about, I practice, I see them resonate to it. I actually feel they're a lot more conscientious than our generation. When I say our, I mean 50 and above people. So many of you are younger. So they're much more conscientious to the society, to larger purpose, to lesser entitlement, to not wanting to own things which are fixed. And hence it's pretty easy to relate to them. As long as you can put some purpose in front of them, they are all willing to go for that purpose. So I find it much more easier to tackle it. Of course, I find it tough to do this back at home with my own daughter and son. Like most of us struggle because this is where we don't cut the branch of the tree. We like to keep the branch and protect them on that branch. So whenever you find that they're trying to fly, you go and tell them you can't do this, you can't do that, this will happen, that will happen, etc. Because you will tell them that I will put my power on you because of my experience. I am telling you, you listen to me. The fact is that nobody in today's world is wanting to be lectured on or told from a pedestal. You have to engage with them as a partner, somebody equal, and then show them the larger purpose. So that's how I think it works. And that's how I have experienced my company, at least. 40,000 associates across the globe, about 18,000 of them outside the country in different nationalities, and the average age is 26. So.
Thank you. And there are a few questions circling around the same point, both in FB as well as in the chat window. Kindly give suggestions on keeping the students, and few of them have asked for their faculty team also, to stay motivated in this current situation.
Oh yeah. See, look, this adversity, the uncertainty, every day the government guidelines change, the lockdown 3.0, then 4.0, positive cases going up. It is tough. I would only suggest take a day at a time. Don't think too far ahead. Thank your count all your blessings, and the fact that you're not sick and you're fine and you're talking to people, you have the technology enabled at your homes or wherever you are. Draw a lot of courage from it. Not too many people in this country can have what we have on this call. Okay, let's remember that. There are migrant labor who are walking 500 kilometers. I don't think you and I can walk that much. I at least can't. Okay, so all I can tell you is, look, it's important for you to count your blessings, and hence don't get complacent on your branch. Figure out a way in which you can make more people fly around you. Get a sense of purpose, whether it's for your subordinates, whether it's for your peers, whether it's for your students. Just figure out a way in which you can engage with them to prepare them for the future and prepare them for the flight. It's, the beautiful story I remember, and I think I'll take a minute to explain it. One of my own office colleagues, I will not divulge his name just for the sake of a very bright young guy, was locked down at home. Now he and his son, and it's there on social media. Go to Infosys BPM and you'll see the video. He and his son, they found a pupa, and at the beginning of the lockdown, they put it in a nice little glass container, and they named that as Cowboy or Kobo. And the pupa, and the son was, I think his name is Sid. So Sid and Kobo. And that's the story in social media, Facebook, Insta. The real story. So after 10, 12 days, every day, the inquisitiveness to see the pupa, what has happened, nothing happens. Because a lot happens within the egg before it hatches. The world sees only the hatched egg or the hatched pupa. We think nothing is happening, right? Because many times we are so frustrated that every day we think, now government announced 20 lakh crore package. So we think next day morning some money is in your bank account. It doesn't work like that. All of us know it, but we still hope because there's nothing wrong in hoping. But a lot goes on inside the pupa. And then on the 13th day, there's a beautiful butterfly, and they together open that glass container. So I think this lockdown is like that. We have to metamorphosize from within. We can do things which can help us to steel up our resolve for the future, learn new things, new habits. It's easy to preach. I don't do too much of it myself. So I want to be honest. Invest some time in your health, some meditation. My wife will laugh at me if she hears me know this, because she keeps telling me you don't do enough of any of this. So all I'm saying is, look, I'm human, but I definitely would, I want to. The intention is to grow yourself from within. And when you're in a lockdown, you have that comfort and the wherewithal to do it. So metamorphosize yourself like the pupa to the butterfly. That's really the story I want to tell you.
Thank you. And if it
And
is
sorry,
okay,
ma'am. One other point. For people, many of you, I keep telling my son too. Many of you, great opportunity. All online universities have opened up so many courses. Unbelievable number of courses are free from best universities in the world. Just go register yourself and do that over a period of 40 days or 60 days. And you'll then be a graduate in change management or whatever, a certificate of merit in something from Stanford or Harvard or IIT or IIM, whatever. There are so many courses in Coursera. So you can go do that. It's not, or just go outside your community. You'll find a lot of migrant labor hanging around, not having food, figuring out, create a volunteer team and get them food. Give yourself a sense of purpose. That's all there is in the short term. And in the long term, I'm sure I'm a big believer in being an optimist. It's a V-shaped recovery. Be sure about it. There's nothing called L or U. In the alphabet, there is only V. So it'll be a V-shaped recovery and we should all be ready for it when it happens.
thank you. There are many more questions coming up. If your time permits, we'll.
Ma'am, 1 second, if you don't mind, let me check. Let me just check. I'm sorry. Give me a minute.
Yeah.
How many are there? Can we sort of put a time limit and cap it if you can? I can answer it offline too, if people feel that's okay. I have a catch up with my recruitment, with my technology infrastructure team. So that's at 4:30. So can we sort of, I have to walk across to where they are. So 4:25, another 10, 12 minutes.
Sure.
I'll make my responses quick and short, but I always like to tell a story. So it's a good thing.
It's interesting also. Thank you. And the next question is, how many hours will how do you manage your personal life and your office as a CEO? Like
I'm
how
not
do
a
you
good
take
example.
rest?
Yeah. I'm honestly not a good example. So I don't think I should be talking about it. I have a very disproportionate amount of time I spend at work or at home thinking of or doing work, not the the housework. I wish I did more of that, but more of work from home in the true sense. And I just feel my self-discipline can improve. So it's journey of improvement always for all of us. So I'm a little imbalanced, so not a good storyteller on this.
Thank you. And many other questions almost from your answers, I think they would have got the answers also. Something different alone I would like to put forth to you here. If you could think of someone whom you look up to as an authentic leader, what is it about them that signals their authenticity?
See, look, many leaders I meet, okay, every leader, my team members, my own direct reports, peers, and Infosys, we've been blessed with a lot of great leaders. And, but I will like to talk about my mom because she's no more. But for me, she didn't have the educational qualifications. She had just done 10th grade, okay, for various reasons, family circumstance, and I'm not going to judge her. But I can tell you she can put any of our MBAs from Harvard or Stanford or IIM to shame in terms of how she could organize, mobilize people, and do things. So, her biggest thing which I learned from her was empathy. Your ability to wear the shoe of people who are not really in the same position as you and being able to relate to them and do the right things for them. So that's really what I learned from her.
Thank you. As a CEO, what makes you excited?
Sorry, give me a minute, please.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
As a CEO, what makes you excited about Mondays? That is before COVID.
Today, there is no differentiation in the days, honestly. It's so difficult to even remember which day it is. Uh, See, whether a CEO or as a worker, I think just coming to be with people whom you care for. I like my team. We have, I keep saying, 8 out of 10 people in any team, if you start liking, then it's a family. It's not no longer work. So there is a level of passion and a commitment. Of course, our business has done well. I'm happy to say that we are one of the faster growing service lines within the company. And it's a privilege to lead such a diverse and inclusive team. 42% of our team is women employees. We work shifts. So while a lot of people told me when I moved to BPM from IT, you're taking BPM, yeah, that call center night shift, I can tell you 100% the BPM industry is among the, I'm not trying to sell the industry. It's important for you to know that the best of robotic process automation and AI technologies are implemented on the BPM floor. And that is where process, people, and technology come together. So this is an old world view of BPM, where if you think that this is a boring industry which does some call center work in the night, and I want you to tell you that the best work for the best companies in the world is happening in a BPM floor, because we are an extension of that company, whether it's trade promotion management, whether it's insurance, healthcare, revenue assurance, billing, finance and accounting, closing of books of large corporations, HR, enabling payroll for people, applying for furloughs with the UK government for UK clients, for their employees. We do a lot of very interesting work. We have about 210 clients, and every client we do different pieces of work. So for me, the other thing which makes me come in on a Monday is because there's always something new to learn and firefight sometimes as a CEO. Some new development, something happened, some client is escalating, some new technology is coming, which one of my young employees has tried on the floor. It just gives you that sense of well-being and inquisitiveness.
Thank you. It is from an anonymous attendee. When it comes to Infosys, what are you most proud of?
I think I would like to thank Mr. Murthy and the founders for what they've done in creating a world-class company. Many people complain many things. It could have been a product company. It could have been this. It could have been many things. But the fact that they worked in a world in 1980s and took this company to where it is, a world famous brand name. Single biggest thing I'm proud of with humility is they put respect in the passport of an Indian passport holder. So when I go and show my passport today in any country's counter on immigration, there is a sense of respect which comes for an Indian passport. And that companies like Infosys have done. I'm saying like Infosys because there are other companies too, which have contributed to the entire IT-enabled services industry. So, of course, Mr. Murthy with his vision led this from the front in a crucial phase of this journey and is always an inspiration.
Thank you so much. And there are so many, thanks and a few comments, like many thanks to Harsh. One of the best sessions I have attended in the last 2 months. Many of the other industry people have also responded to given a feedback like this in the both chat window as well as in the feedback Facebook. Thank you so
much. All I can tell you is, look, I have been very lucky in my life to work in great companies, work with great people, work with peers like Prabhakaran, who are today running different institutions. And I must tell you that it is a privilege which very few get. And I'm grateful for that privilege. Many times I don't say it as often, but there are moments like this when I talk to this August forum that I truly feel that way. So I wish you all success, stay safe, learn to be happy with uncertainty, because there is certainty in uncertainty that tomorrow there could be new guidelines. There is a new lockdown 4.0 which is coming up. So all of us like the weather. See, the beauty with weather is we accept the weather. If it is very hot, we put on the air conditioner and we don't step out or wear a sun hat. If it is raining, we take an umbrella, but we don't complain. But somehow we feel all the rest should not be like the weather. It should all be controlled in the way we want it to happen. It doesn't work like that. People who adapt, and the COVID pandemic is proving it. The most resilient people and the most adaptable people. I'm not a biology student, but of late I'm many times quoting from biology. Is the survival of the most adaptable. So the short term, survive, thrive, and then revive. This is really what you need to go through. And the V shape is all about that. During that cusp of the V, you need to survive, which means you need to be healthy. You need to be mentally, physically, and purposefully engaged. And then, you can thrive, and then you can revive in a big way. Thank you, madam.